Okay, hello, good evening, and thank you for joining us. The painting has got to a point where what I'm probably going to do next is fairly finicky bits, so I hope you can see them. The other thing is just to remind you that we've got back the Celestial Songs painting, and it's going up to Trading Boundaries tomorrow or Friday. I can't remember when, but one of those days. And that exhibition is currently running. It's now up. So, and they're open for cups of tea and cakes, if not for lunch. Hopefully they'll get that fixed soon. So up here, I've got cracks in the rock. And you might be able to see that because the light is coming in a diffuse way from the left-hand side of the rocks is illuminated, and the right hand, when there's a crack, is in somewhat of a shadow. So if I'm going to be doing that on the very fine ones, it may be harder to see, so I might work on something like this area here. And what I'll do, and what I would normally do, is I'll look for shapes in the very loose work. There's hints of highlights and shadows and valleys and high points, so I'll look to trace them out. I'm a bit croaky today.
Don't have COVID, do you, Roger? My friend just said to me this afternoon, "Oh, I'm a bit croaky, I'm losing my voice." It's not COVID, it's tonsillitis. And an hour later said, "Oh, I've just tested positive."
Well, what can I say?
Look after yourselves, people.
There you go.
Eat your fruit and veg.
This is the black I mixed with the three transparent primary colours, and because I keep a lid on it, it keeps. The most important time is not like this. This is just being economical. The most important time to keep the colour is when you need to match it, when you don't finish a colour in one go.
When you say keep the colour, do you mean literally the pot that you've mixed?
Yeah.
And how do you stop it drying out?
It has a lid.
Ooh, height of technology here, people.
Yeah, these cost a penny or something like that. What they are is, I think they're called sauce pots, you know, for when you buy takeaways.
Yeah.
But I can buy them in hundreds, and as I say, they don't cost very much.
Yeah. Or reuse from your takeaways.
Well,
if
there
you're
is that,
feeling...
but that's a slow way to gather.
Were the panthers and birds on the cover of Drama meant to represent the band members? There's been speculation.
Yes, there has. Much speculation, I would say. Yeah.
Are you going to keep people hanging?
Probably.
Keep them speculating.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Will this new Close to the Edge art coincide with the 50th anniversary concerts?
It'll be late for that. Yeah, it was for a box set that we probably do a bit later in the year, or maybe for the Close to the Edge concerts in the States. I don't have any dates for those yet.
What was the inspiration for the budgie fighter plane?
Oh. I saw it. I went to Farnborough Air Show. I guess I can't remember what year it was, but it was 1961 or two, a long time ago anyway. And I saw the Blackbird reconnaissance plane. It was on show there, and I just thought, it was the most amazing looking aircraft. It was just incredible. And I made a model of it, which was hanging around my bedroom as a kid, and then when I was at the Royal College it was on my desk. And we were climbing in Wales one holiday, and up on the mountains I found the skull of a seagull, and I was amazed how similar the shape was at the back of the skull with the section through the aircraft. So I sawed the front end of the aircraft off and put the skull next to it and thought, it's an absolute fix, an absolute match. It fitted. So I fixed it to it, and apparently it went down very well with the people where it was developed. I was told at a dinner, actually it was my birthday, a few years ago on my birthday, I was approached by some guys who were from NASA, and they say, what are you doing? I was at the DragonCon convention, and they said, what are you doing tonight? And I said, I don't know, why? And they said, well, it's your birthday, are you going out? I said, oh no, I've got nothing planned. And they invited me to dinner, and they were having dinner with a couple of guys from Skunk Works, where all these secret aircraft were developed. And they told me that the chief engineer had the budgie plane painted down the side of one of the hangars that was huge, 600 feet long. And I said, oh my God, I'd love to see a photo. And their reaction to that was, oh no, we'd all be arrested if we took a camera.
Wow, that's so cool.
It is, but it's unfortunately just a story. I believe it to be true.
But it's something no one can see, or only very limited personnel can see.
Yes.
And therefore they don't need to get any sort of copyright from you.
Oh no, I was very pleased that they did it. They weren't selling hangers. Wasn't like a t-shirt.
But do you think one day you might ever look up and see a plane with the budgie plane on?
No, I never thought I would do that, but that wasn't the end of the story.
Mm.
They said the guy was very fond of my designs, and the front end of the Patriot drone was based on the front end of the kind of Gothic flying machine that I was using as a logo at the time. And I felt, yeah, that was a privilege. I suppose it's not too good a thing to be excited about. Excuse me, military machines. But sometimes, I think Leonard Cohen wrote a song about the beauty of our weapons. They have a sinister purpose, but are often astonishingly well conceived.
Yeah. Well, they're often well funded, and maybe that's why.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, so it was an interesting experience.
We have a viewer who says your new Asia 1983 painting reminds them of an old painting.
Of an old painting?
Yeah.
It is.
Is it the same?
Yes.
Okay. Have you embellished it?
Not really, no. Sometimes old pieces that haven't been used as record covers get used, especially if there's a real shortage of time. And I was working with Mike Innes on this series, and we both thought we had way more time than it turned out we did. So it became necessary to look at what existed. Occasionally we have to.
Did you know Barney Bubbles?
Did I know him? No, sadly not. I like his work. I love his work, actually, some of it in particular. But we never met. I spoke to him when we used his work in the album cover album, but sadly we never met. I say sadly we never met because Barney died. I think I was told he killed himself, but that was a long time ago.
Do you think there's ever a melancholy that comes with being an artist?
I don't think it's a rule. It's an option.
You certainly don't seem very melancholy to me.
No, I didn't
But you've always got the stereotype, haven't you, of the kind of tortured artist.
Yes. Well, I think it comes from a different direction. You know, it's like Puccini's La Bohème. It's more about the starving artist than the tortured artist. And yeah, I think generally, to a very surprising degree, artists do get a tough deal. I remember when Freya was very little, her uncle was admiring something she was painting and asked her, he said, "Freya, that's very nice. Are you going to be an artist when you grow up?" And she got really indignant and said, "I already am."
Wow.
But that wasn't it. That wasn't the amazing bit. Because she came up and sort of tugged my arm and said, "Dad, I don't really want to be an artist." I said, "That's okay. You can be whatever you want." She said, "I like it, but you know all these famous artists and they're all broke." And I thought, well, what can I say?
That's great. Wow. What wisdom at a young age.
Well, she did it nevertheless.
Yes, she went against her own wise words.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you know you've done a Hawkwind album cover?
Well, yes, and the reason why that's a question, and appropriately a question, is it was essentially a bootleg. Not by Hawkwind, but by the record company. I forget what they are now. I think the record company was called Classic Rock or something. But they put out a lot of stuff with my work on it, including Hawkwind.
So, follow-up question to the Freya story. Is she broke?
She's an artist, that's the answer.
Exactly.
It's one of the rules.
Freya's artwork is stunning though.
Yeah. And Freya's probably doing the sensible thing. She's got a job in a gallery which gives her time to paint and, you know, make sure that she gets fed. So that's working well for her. This summer, we're doing a show together in the Haight Street Arts Centre. So I'm looking forward to that.
Have you come across James Gurney's Dinotopia books?
Easily, because they're on my shelf somewhere. He's a very, very, very competent artist. Yeah.
Yeah, you were just being asked what you think of them, the books.
Well, he can paint. I don't know what else to say. He's a breathtakingly good painter. He has actually done a book on how to paint. So if anyone likes his work and would like to paint like him, I'd recommend his book. It's brilliant. But when we finish, just before we go off air, I'll have a quick look and see if I can give you the title of that.
So you're not heading off on the cruise to the edge this year, are you, Roger?
I think that's definitely not going to be the case. I won't say I haven't been invited, because we're never invited.
What do you normally do? Just turn up?
Well, you know, as it comes towards the last minute, our name appears on the roster, but that tends to be there before anyone contacts us. Michael might go. Michael has been talking about going. Michael from Trading Boundaries. Yes or not?
Yes, and not going
No.
on their cruise.
No.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, it's yeah, I have to say that I always had fun on them. They were always great. Always a great place to meet people too.
So the book titles are Imaginative Realism and Colour and Light.
Yeah.
Does that sound?
Colour and Light is the one I would recommend.
Will you do a print for the cruise if Michael goes?
Well, no, because we can only do a print for the cruise if we're there officially, which we always have been, even though the requests came in very late in the day very often. I mean, obviously we knew, and Martin, yes, his manager would say, yeah, you're definitely on board for the cruise, but the organisers would be only contacting us very late in the day.
Why don't you tend to use photographs for reference?
Why don't I? Is it obvious that this is also wrong?
Is it because you couldn't find any floating rocks to photograph?
No, they're all based on real floating rocks.
Thought so.
Quite right. I often do. I often use photographs. Yeah. Yeah. I've got lots of illustrated books, so yeah, I do look at them a lot. and I take lots and lots of photographs myself, which I use for reference. So sometimes I would say it's a really good idea to make sure whatever you're painting is real, whether you paint from a photograph or paint from life. But as I said when I was doing this, the sort of rough, abstracty shape that's underlying this painting hints at form and shape, and I find it much more satisfactory to follow those hints and nudges from the background than trying to force a real portrait of a rock over the top of it. But I definitely spent hours this week looking at photographs of rocks I'd taken and remembering their shape and texture and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's not made up, but I'm not following a photograph right there. But I would have looked at them, and there'd be a whole bunch around here. These are, whoops. These are rocks from a cave in the Isle of Man. And yeah.
Amazing colours.
Yeah, but that's not real colour. That's pushing the saturation.
Okay.
You know, the real colour would look almost monochrome. But there's just enough hint to pull out that sulphurous yellow and the blue band. They're there, but much, much fainter. And yeah, it's quite exciting to have a look and explore what colours could be. So they were pictures I used as reference for the textures for a painting I did called The Meeting Place, or Niable, which is where two tectonic plates meet in the Isle of Man.
Oh wow.
So I went there and took the photographs and did reference sketches when I had my exhibition in the Isle of Man.
Do you often plan trips to kind of photograph and discover places and nature?
I do, but I used to do it a great deal more because I just loved hiking and walking in deserts and mountains. So I love doing that. I did go, when I was a student, we went climbing all over the west coast of Scotland, including inland at the places like the Cairngorms. And that was amazing. I really loved that. There's a writer called Robert Macfarlane, and I'd recommend anyone who loves the countryside, not only in England but in other countries, to read his books. They're amazing. I wish he'd written when I was a student. It wouldn't have made me do more, but it would have been great fun reading them.
What's your ideal day, Roger?
My ideal day?
Yeah.
Okay. If I get up very early, this happens more in the summer than the winter. I get up and I do a few hours work, then have a shower and come back and do the day. I like that quiet, very early morning. In the winter there's an added risk. I could get up very early and wander around, but there's always a risk I'm going to tread on a mouse, or worse still, half a mouse, or much worse still, find one on my bed, which has happened. Feed the cat, who shows her gratitude by throwing up, and I've got a risk of walking in So my ideal day is when none of that happens. Yeah, I like working in the morning best. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a book called, I think it's called Daily Rituals or Daily Habits, and it's somebody's sort of catalogued all the daily routines and habits of artists. I mean, it's artists and writers and creative people.
Ah,
It's just quite interesting. And there's a lot of commonalities, one of which is working in the very early morning.
right. I'm going to get my cat to read that book and say, look what you're ruining. This is how I should be living.
Do you meditate at all, Roger?
A lot of my friends who meditate sit still and meditate, and I used to think when I was walking the dog that for me the best kind of meditation is again that very early morning and walking in a landscape, with the dog, sometimes with the dog. So yes, I find pathways in landscapes, the wilder the better, a great enhancement of the meditative process.
And to a certain extent, your painting could be considered a form of meditation. You're sort of losing your sense of self and focusing in the moment, really.
Yes. I find the process is different enough. I'm not going to deny that, but I am going to say it's different enough. It's very calming. I do find it has that aspect of meditation about it, that it is calming. But if I was to think very practically, I would say my preparation to paint is meditative more than the process of painting. I have to prepare to paint, and that's more like meditation than the actual process of painting. Maybe not. I'll think on that.
We're going very philosophical now. Do you have an overall purpose?
Do I?
I think in terms of your art, like, would you say creating art is your purpose?
Oddly enough, a little bit. When I was a child, and when I was 12, which is that point when you're sort of ambiguous whether you're a child or not. About the age I discovered Elvis Presley and rock and roll, I was very keen on the idea of designing the future. And that is an idea and an obsession that's never left me. I find our attempts at building horrific, and I always thought there's a much better way. So if I ever feel the arrogance of thinking I have a purpose, it would be to explore that. I've talked about that at times, and people have said, oh, wouldn't you miss painting? And I think, no, there's a lot, whenever I'm doing anything, there's something else I'm not doing. If I'm painting, I'm not having a conversation with Freya or walking in the countryside. There's all kinds of things that you choose, and what you try and do is a balance. And when it comes to painting, yeah, I love it. But if I found myself in a position where I was designing and building things, I'd be very content. I mean, when I spend time now, I put the prototype, which is about, I don't know, I'm always guessing, but I think the round trip is about 17 miles. So it's about 8.5 miles door to door from my studio, where we're renovating the prototype. I love being there when everyone's gone home and it's empty, and just sitting there or walking around in it. I love that. So that is something that's big deal, and I don't do enough of. Painting, I can't say I do enough of, but it's much easier to do.
There must be something quite magical about actually being able to step inside the thing you've created.
Yes, that's true. It feels fantastic. I love that.
And on a different note, you're being asked about the cats. How many do you have? Where are they? Can they be seen?
Well, they're not famous for their invisibility. At most inconvenient times, it's only one, it's a female. She got attached to Freya and moved in with, I say us, but Freya moved out. She's in Japan, living in Japan, but the cat is still here, and the cat kind of tolerates me. There's a fair chance she's in the studio.
I can sense her.
Yeah, but
She's
it
near.
would not be obvious. And I know if I think, oh God, I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes, wherever I think she is, bottom of the garden, out exploring, the minute I sit down, she turns up. So, yeah.
Have you ever done any sketches of her or
No.
paintings?
No, I guess I should. She
You
deserves
should.
it.
She's very pretty.
And very angry at times.
And she's not angry with me.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just you, Roger.
I did have a very spooky moment one night, because she never slept in my room at night at first, but gradually she came to do that, and so every morning about 3 or 4 in the morning she comes and sleeps on my bed. So when I get up, she gives me a dirty look for disturbing her. And a few nights ago I got up, because I get up in the dark very often, and the cat freaked out and ran. And I thought, first thought, which lasted a split second, what was that about? And my second thought, my God, it isn't my cat.
Wow.
So I don't know if
Have
that
you
was true.
gained an extra cat, Roger?
I've never seen it.
Wow.
I've never seen it other than that moment.
But isn't that how this current cat happened? She
Yes.
adopted you.
She did. And I say she adopted Freya. She came from a house which had some very aggressive dogs. And she'd find her way to the barn. And if the dogs were chasing her, she'd run through the letterbox, barely touching the sides. She still does it, but it now takes
Blimey.
her about 3 days.
Through the letterbox, that's quite a feat.
Yes, it was very impressive.
What do you think of Jethro Tull, and would you design a cover for them?
you know, I'd have to be asked, you know. If I was asked, I'd almost certainly say for sure. I met Ian Anderson once. We had dinner. We actually had dinner with Bob Carruthers, and I don't think either of us really want to remember that aspect of it. But yeah. I love music, so there's all kinds of bands I love. Yes, went on tour with Jethro Tull.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure if it was the first tour of America, but it was before I met them. And yeah, they opened for Jethro Tull. At different times, they opened for some surprising bands. They opened for Cream once. So before demise of Cream, yes, opened. And I think at the Albert Hall.
Have you ever felt like you're being directed by a higher source because you're so in the zone?
Yeah, undoubtedly. Freya will come up to me and lean over and say, "Dad, you've got the elbow all wrong."
Freya is your higher source.
My most regular higher source. She was very good at anatomy, so I would always listen if he said I've got something wrong anatomically.
Is the large floating rock going to have a tree on it?
Absolutely, yes. It's meant to look like the rock in Flights of Icarus. It's meant to look like that same rock, or a close relative at least. So yeah, they will. I should get on with it, I suppose.
Have you ever used dead creatures in your paintings or copied things to make them look like something else?
Dead creatures?
So the person here, they were struggling to paint a mountain, but then they found a moth's wing and I think painted that and it served as a mountain.
Well, in that sense, yes. Ideas can be triggered by all kinds of things. The opposite is more likely, that something inanimate gives the impression of being something animate. That often happens.
What's your favourite tree?
My favourite tree?
What kind of tree? Doesn't have to be a personal tree.
Well, in this country, I have a fondness for yew trees and Scots pine, So 2 conifers, ash and oak I like. In America, in the northwest, I love sequoia groves, and I love the smell of the redwoods when they have a lot of cedar in them. That cedar smell is fabulous.
Did Yes give you much direction on the covers you did, or is that all you?
No, not really. No. We did talk about them, but not always a lot. Weirdly, more recently than in the past.
We're being asked if we can have Freya on soon. I wonder if there's a way.
Well, I hope so. I'm going to spend a month with her in the summer, but that's going to be in San Francisco. But she may come here on the way, so we'll see if we can arrange something.
Can you describe the opaque colours? Are they see-through?
There is some opaque colour here. The grey is a neutral grey, which is opaque, and here, excuse me, titanium white. But that's pretty much it. I'd probably put some opaque grey underneath on these rocks, but most of it is transparent. It's acrylic though, it's not watercolour, but you know, I mean, to a degree I'm working with acrylic as if it was watercolour.
And if you had one wish of something you could add to your craft, what would it be?
It's my craft.
Or one thing you wish you were better at?
I suppose if I really cared, if there was something I really, really wanted to do, I'd just do it. So I guess I'd have to say there's not something really obviously that I wanted to do because I haven't done anything about it.
We've got a couple more questions coming in. It's just on 1:45 and Roger's phone is on low battery.
Oh.
So I'm just pointing out those two. Maybe one more question, Roger.
Go on then.
Is there any things you find particularly difficult to paint?
Well, if the question is Is there anything I'm not very good at? I guess I have to be much more careful when I'm painting people because I'm more unsure of that. I can get a likeness, but it's not easy for me. I have to work at it a bit. But I do know a lot of people who are really amazingly good at that, and I worked with them in publishing. People like Jeff Jones, he was phenomenally good portraitist. And although I've not worked with him in the same way, Ian McCaig is brilliant at portraits. So I always admire that.
People must be hard to paint. Probably the hardest thing to capture, because we know the human face better than we know anything else.
Yes. It was, life drawing was the best training because it was the hardest thing. So I was really glad I did that. I did 4 years of that at art school. So that was really good training. So I can do it, but I don't have the fluidity of some artists in that area. Yeah. So is that the last question?
There are a couple more that I will apologise I haven't got to, but I don't want us to be cut off should your battery cut us off. So please ask them again next week.
Oh, okay.
Tune back
in.
in.
We can look through and find them.
We can look through and find them, yes, completely.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, and yeah, same time next week.
See you next week, everyone.